I'd like to extend a really warm welcome to everyone who's joining the webinar today and also our guests who will be speaking today on this session for Innovating for Scalable Student Engagement and Success at the University of the Free State. I'm Grace. I'm going to be hosting the session today. I'm also the European Implementation Manager here at FeedbackFruits, meaning I work with partnering institutions of ours, such as UFS, to ensure that FeedbackFruits can be implemented successfully and effectively across the entire institution. I'm also joined by Ni on my side. You might have seen the first two messages in the chat from her. She is in the marketing team. She's the writer of ebooks and the organizer of webinars such as this, which means she'll be monitoring the chat as we go through. If you have any questions or if you have ideas and thoughts you'd like to share, please don't hesitate to actually make use of it. And any resources she'll be dropping in there as well for you to have access to and read. Also, thank you for organizing the webinar. Good. In that case, that takes us to our guest introductions. I'm very excited to be introducing you to part of the team at the University of the Free State who have been working to learn, embed, implement, and create feedback-free activities across the entire institution. So I'm going to go through one by one. We're joined by Violet, who is a senior learning designer, but also the FeedbackFruits project lead. So Violet will be speaking to the implementation process that we actually underwent, how we scaled the trainings, so on and so forth. We are also joined by Zenobia, academic trainee, Shani, acting curriculum development and design, Matlali, learning designer, and Rhea, also a junior learning designer. So the structure for the session today is I'm going to just contextualize it a little bit. I'm going to give a brief introduction to our partnership so you know what is more to come. Then, as I briefly already mentioned, Violet's going to be starting us off by speaking to the implementation process. After that, Matlali and Rhea are going to explain a use case where FeedbackFruits was implemented in one module across 3 different campuses. After that, Zenobia is going to speak to the use of analytics for best practice in teaching. And then Shani is going to conclude the use cases, speaking about how she successfully implemented FeedbackFruits in 2 very large scale classes. So we have some nice diversity in what we're going to hear about and what's going to be shared today. If we have time, we'll end with discussion and questions, but please don't shy away from dropping them in the chat as we go as well, because we'll make sure that you get the answers either now or afterwards too. So that brings us to the first round of kind of context and introductions. I've actually had the pleasure of working with the University of Free State since 2022, which is when we started validating and scaling out the implementation across faculties. It was driven by the value added for students and teachers by being able to provide a means for students to be able to engage with each other and content, but still ensuring that there's flexibility in how it's implemented and used by individual instructors, and that the engagement with the activities and with each other can be monitored. So today, the efforts have actually reached almost 24,000 active students and over 1,400 different active activities, which is commendable and a notable accomplishment in the short time, and also why we've selected them and have them speaking to share their experience today, because this is really a fantastic use case to both learn about. If you're already partnering or piloting FeedbackFruits, it's a great way to see what you might be expecting or experiencing and start that kind of peer learning and collaboration as well. Because as I'm sure we all know, initiatives such as this aren't always straightforward to implement. There's a lot of people that can be involved, especially when efforts go across faculties. We have diverse and specific needs that might be faculty or school dependent. You want to make sure that what you're doing is actually inclusive for the students and the diverse needs that you have, but doesn't necessarily require 50 different technologies for everyone to learn. So that is also why we implement such a partnership-based model. So every partner of FeedbackFruits gets a dedicated implementation manager like myself and a partner success manager to ensure you're equipped with the knowledge, the expertise, and also the support needed for this process. So I think you can tell at this point that it truly is a collaborative effort to get these initiatives off the ground. And on that note, I'd like to hand the floor over to Violet to actually dive into what this effort looked like at UFS.
Thank you so much, Grace, for the introduction. I think everybody has heard it's Violet, learning designer at the University of the Free State and project lead for FeedbackFruits. I'm going to be running you through how we implemented FeedbackFruits at the University of the Free State. You will see in the next slide, I will be introducing what the University of the Free State is. It's one of the leading South African institutions that is committed to academic excellence and innovation. We have 3 campuses within the Free State. That is the main campus in Bloemfontein. We have one in the south of Bloemfontein, we call it South Campus. And then we have another one in the Kwakwa, that is, we call the Kwakwa Campus. The University of the Free State initially has 7 faculties. They are stated on the slide where we have Economic and Management Sciences, which is both Bloemfontein and Kwakwa. We have Education, which is Bloemfontein, South, and Kwakwa. We have Health Sciences, which is on the main campus. We have the Natural and Agricultural Sciences, which is Bloemfontein and Kwakwa. We have Humanities, which we have in Bloemfontein and in Kwakwa. We have Theology and Religion, which is on the main campus. And then we have Support Services, which runs across all 3 faculties, all 3 campuses. The priority of the University of the Free State is students being at the center of their learning and the teaching. We employ a diverse range of institutional methods that work to cultivate active environment and create an inclusive learning environment. University of the Free State is a forward-thinking institution, and it has strategically integrated technology to enhance various facets of university life, which includes teaching, learning, and assessments. You will see before the implementation of FeedbackFruits in the next slide, Grace, there were problems that were experienced by the university before we implemented FeedbackFruits. We had limited student engagement, where our traditional teaching methods often resulted in students passively learning, and we had limited student participation. We also experienced a delayed feedback, where our students often experienced long delays in receiving feedback on assignments, which then hindered their learning progress. The assessments were subjective before we ran to get help from FeedbackFruits, because the methods were subjective, leading to inconsistencies in grading and students' evaluations. And then we experienced difficulty in tracking progress, which became a bit of a challenge to track students' progress and identify areas where interventions were needed. Now we ran and figured that there's a tech tool in the next slide, thank you, Grace, that can assist in bridging the gap with these challenges that we experienced. We implemented FeedbackFruits, or rather we piloted the tool in 2023, where we chose courses from accounting and UFSS that were carefully selected to test the process from these academic disciplines. Staff that was involved in the pilot process received specialized training on effectively using FeedbackFruits in their teaching. Already students were enrolled in these courses, but they were guided on how to use the platform in the midst of piloting the process. And data was collected throughout the pilot phase to assess the effectiveness of FeedbackFruits in addressing the identified challenges. The launch then began in 2024. We first started with training the trainers, which were the learning design team and the supporting teams within the Center for Teaching and Learning, who were trained to become expert support for faculties in FeedbackFruits. We started the implementation process of the tool in March, running over 3 weeks, where we trained everybody within the institution that registered for the training sessions. Then in July, we had an institutional training, which is part of the implementation process. So after we have implemented in March, we now bridge and run it throughout 2 semesters. But for the first semester, obviously it was the implementation. And in the next semester, we did an institutional training. Then we had the pleasure of Grace and her team in training us in September on how to train the trainers with the templates, where they introduced new templates for the learning design teams to support different faculties. I allude again, we have 7 faculties, we have instructional designers that support the different faculties. The key highlights that came from all the training sessions that we had. It was the hands-on training sessions that helped in participants engaging in practical exercises that familiarize themselves with FeedbackFruits features. We have support resources where participants were provided with access to online resources and support material. And then ongoing feedback and evaluation where we regularly check for feedback and evaluate through sending participants links that are distributed to assess the effectiveness of the training sessions that they have attended. From all of this, FeedbackFruits is a good tool to use, but I would suppose all our international stakeholders attending today will go and play around and see what the tool can do for them. For us, the implementation process involved a comprehensive approach that included careful planning, where we targeted the trainings and we have ongoing support, both from the learning design teams and from Grace and her team. So by addressing the challenges that we had in the second slide for traditional teaching and learning, FeedbackFruits has given us the opportunity to show that it is a potential tool to enhance student engagement. It can also enhance feedback delivery and foster a more effective and equitable learning environment. What is the value of using FeedbackFruits as opposed to just our normal learning management system? We have found that FeedbackFruits provided a more comprehensive and effective solution for teaching and learning compared to Blackboard. We use the Blackboard learning management system because the features of FeedbackFruits and the functionalities not only allowed our lectures to create more engaging, interactive, and personalized learning experiences, but also allowed for students to communicate and to engage with other students, their peers. Remember that learning is at the center for students. So it's not just where we take from lecturers who supplement with the tool, but we also learn from our peers. I'm moving over to introducing Matladi Henry, who will give us an introduction on education. And afterwards, we'll have Zenobia, who will provide us of a case from the School of Accounting. And lastly, we'll have Shani, who will give us a taste of how FeedbackFruits made life fun and learning with UFSS and digital skills. Over to you, Matladi Henry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Violet, for the introduction. As Violet has already mentioned, I'm Matladi and the instructional learning designer for the Faculty of Education on the Godfrey campus, and also a task team lead with Violet in the FeedbackFruits project, right? I'll be presenting with me today, and we will be taking you over through the journey of Mrs. Gail Davids as well as Dr. Nduma as the module owners, now the lecturers of the module in the education faculty. So just a bit of some context. You can move over to the next slide, please. Thank you. So just as Violet has already mentioned, there are 3 campuses from the UFS, Innovating, South Campus, and Godfrey Campus. And this particular module in education is presented across all 3 campuses, right? So as much as these campuses are very much unique in their own experiences and in their own context, the lecturers also noticed that they were experiencing very much similar challenges, right? So there was limited interaction and feedback between the students and the content. So they would put up tasks, but they were not actually sure that students were actually learning, or there was actually deep learning taking place in the content, right? So the nature of the module requires that students critically analyze the content, and they also apply real world examples to the content, right? So the lecturers couldn't actually track if that is actually happening, and they wanted a more efficient tool to actually help with that, right? And there were also challenges in terms of the collaboration. So like I mentioned, the campuses are located in different areas. So just to give you a bit of context with the Qwaqwa campus, there are constantly protests on campus, student protests, there are community protests around. So it would make it difficult for lecturers to actually sync their module schedules and actually come together and sit and say, this is the content that we want for students, and just to have a standardized learning task for across all 3 campuses. So that was a challenge for them. And there was also a need to supplement the tutorials that they have in place, right? So they actually wanted engaging tools that they could also use for their classes. So the implementation phase went on, as Violet has mentioned. We implemented the tool, and Ree and myself were very much the support people for the lecturers throughout the implementation phase. And the lecturers actually implemented using the quizzes and the peer reviews in the modules, right? So throughout the semester, they already noticed some of the improvements. So there was enhanced collaboration between the lecturers because now they were intrigued in using this new tool that was recently introduced in the university and what it can do for them. And what happened then is that they discovered, and we also showed them how to share the templates amongst each other. So it was like now a seamless transaction between the lecturers of the learning tasks. So they didn't have to now switch to other places where they need to share the templates. So it was just a centralized place where they could both easily work on the templates as well, right? So they also noticed improvements in terms of the learning tasks. So previously with the methods that they were using or the tools that they were using on Blackboard, they were not as engaging as they would like to be. So when using FeedbackFruits, they noticed that there are actually prompts that they can engage with, that students can also engage with in the content, right? So this also helped them to gauge where the students are in terms of their content knowledge. Are they actually still critically analyzing the content? So even with the use of the case studies that they put in the quizzes, students were able to now say, okay, this is what I have learned in class, and how do I now critically apply this in this particular quiz? So how did actually now FeedbackFruits assist with designing learning experiences for large classes? So this is very exciting because usually we have large classes at the university. So what helped very much for the lectures was standardizing the learning tasks, right, through the templates. That was very important, and that was very a very intriguing tool. So it was just a seamless exercise as mentioned. And also what was very important for them as well is that there was an automated process between Blackboard and FeedbackFruits. So they didn't have to now have extra administrative work in order for them to push out the grades on Blackboard. And also the feedback that they were giving out to students, they could now focus more on the qualitative feedback, and FeedbackFruits just helped with integrating that quantitative data feedback for them. So with that being said, I'm now going to hand over to Ree just to give you a taste of some of the statistics regarding the modules.
Thank you, Matladi, and good afternoon to everyone. So I'm just going to have a look at the analytics that we pulled from the 3 modules on our LMS. So just to give a bit of context, this module is a second semester module offered on first year level. So it's about the individual in the education context, where Learning Unit 1 is evaluating the South African landscape, and then Learning Unit 2 is using education theories to promote justice as equity and Ubuntu and equal education opportunities. So just keep that in mind as I'm going through my part of the presentation. So first of all, I'd just like us to have a look at the completion rates. So for the Bloemfontein campus, we can see that our students, 91% of them completed, and then there was an increase to 93% for Learning Unit 2. In the South Campus, there was a steady rate at 93%. And then on the Qwaqwa campus, they only caught up with Learning Unit 2. As Matladi and Violet had mentioned, we only learned about the sharing of templates. So that's when the Kwata campus caught up with using FeedbackFruits in their module so that the learning experiences for the students are standardized across all 3 campuses. And then you can tell that these high rates show that our students are consistently engaging with their coursework and meeting their deadlines, since all the percentages are above 90%, which is really good. And then the class average for Learning Unit 1 in Bloemfontein campus was 87%, and then it increased to 92%. On the South campus, we saw a higher increase from 76% to 82%, and the Kwata campus had a really high percentage of 95% of the class average. So these class averages reflect not only higher engagement, but also better learning outcomes, as we can see that our students are actively participating as well as performing well. It was also interesting to see that the smaller class, which is the South campus, performed at the lowest, as much as it was a high percentage. But it's also to note that there are different external factors that come into play, because most of our South campus students have to commute between Bloemfontein and the South campus, because it's about a 20-30 minute drive to that campus. So they might not have enough time to stay on campus and study, because they need to commute by bus offered by the university. And lastly, we've also seen that our students are making use of the platform regularly, seeing that the number of views are closely matching with the number of completion. So this tells us that our students are not having any difficulties with logging in and accessing the FeedbackFruits activities, as we also saw that we never got a lot of queries where students were saying we were struggling with completing these activities. And then on the next slide, I'm just going to touch on the improvement on contribution to student engagement and success. So when these activities were initially created, the primary goal was to enhance the student participation and also deepen their understanding of the course material. Because the purpose of this module is to assist students in developing a theoretical lens through which they'll critically consider the South African teaching and learning context where they'll be educators. So it was really important for us and the lecturers to put the main focus on critical thinking. So for both activities, there was scenario-based multiple choice questions. So this is a really powerful tool for developing critical thinking by encouraging the students to apply theoretical knowledge to real-world situations, and where they can also reflect on their choices and solve problems effectively. So by making decisions in context, our students are better prepared to face more complex challenges in their future educational career. So it was really important for us to create questions where the students would have to think, and then they're able to also see their feedback immediately to see this is the correct answer and this is where I went wrong. And then secondly, we wanted personalized learning experiences. So one of the most impactful aspects of FeedbackFruits has been its ability to foster active learning. Because the one thing our lecturers had mentioned to us was that they want to shy away from the passive learning where our students are just attending classes, but they're not really engaging with the content. So creating these activities on FeedbackFruits, the lecturer was then able to make them each unit specific, where she will also be able to see that my students are engaging with my content on this level. This is how much they do not understand. And that way she was able to get immediate feedback, which would then help her improve their studies, and she can integrate more info or more explanation in future lectures. And then we also saw there was a higher retention of knowledge from our students as seen in the previous stats. And then lastly, the other improvement was the feedback and grading. So as you had seen, the Bloemfontein and the Kwakwa campus had almost 800 students for each class. So it becomes really difficult for a lecturer to have to mark and see how well are my students doing in such a really large class. So since there's immediate feedback and analytics, the lecturers were able to evaluate overall learning at the end of each learning unit, since the results were immediately available, and they were also able to identify gaps in knowledge to integrate in future learning. So because FeedbackFruits automatically grades assessment, it significantly reduced the amount of time the lecturers had to spend on evaluating the classes, and students didn't have to wait to get feedback on each and every question. And another thing that our lecturers had mentioned is that with the other assessment tools, there was a middleman where you send your test to the person, they have to help create it. And then if there are technical glitches, you first have to send an email where they would have to attend to it. So the nice thing with FeedbackFruits is that they had access immediately. So should students experience any problems, there is no lag in giving your students help. They were able to help immediately. So in conclusion, for this module in the education faculty, FeedbackFruits has not only fostered deeper student engagement, but it also streamlined the learning process with the automated grading. It also allowed both students and lecturers to focus on meaningful real-world learning and improvement. And we are hoping that these type of tools will help them become the best educators that we can have in our country. And with that being said, I'm just going to hand over to Zenobia to give her presentation.
Hi everyone. So as you all know, my name is Innovating and I'm an academic trainee. You have all read my biography, but something unique about me is I'm a future chartered accountant that doesn't like numbers. So whether that is an outlier or not, that's something about me. So I was an academic trainee for EOEC, which is Ethics and Corporate Governance. So basically, especially in the accounting world, we have a lot of scandals. So we are basically trying to teach our students that ethics from a personal standpoint, as well as from a business standpoint, you need to have good ethical values. And that's what we want them to impart when they leave university. So the core of our module was participation. And as you'll see on our next slide, we had two types of students. So we had 400 students enrolled in the Chartered Accounting course, and we also had 400 students enrolled for Finance and Admin. And we had them on both the Bloom campus and Kwakwa campus as well. So we had quite a big group of students that we had to teach, one academic trainee and one lecturer. So when I first knew about FeedbackFruits, I didn't have any training. My lecturer gave me a quiz and said, figure it out and learn. So for me, I basically equivocated it to a first date of knowing where to start. So as soon as you enter FeedbackFruits, there's a lot of options. There's a lot of tools that you can use. So I had to basically understand what was going to be beneficial for all types of my students. And with that, we chose quizzes and peer evaluation. Of course, nerves, as we all experience from COVID, sometimes technology does not work with us. So I think that was my biggest worrying factor in terms of will it break down, will it not connect, will my students struggle at the end? But then eventually the excitement kicked in. This could be something that makes life easy, not only for me and the lecturer, but also for my students as well. So for us in ethics, we decided that FeedbackFruits would really help us with engagement. Trying to speak to 800 students in a classroom doesn't always work. So this would help us with making sure that students are engaged and are actively participating, as well as understanding the topics. We had 10 topics. It was a new module for our students. So this could help bridge the gap between those who already did the module and those who are doing the module for the first time, but also control. So in terms of control, it's understanding and making sure that all our students are at the same level. There's not one student who's better equipped than the other, but they are all understanding the topic at the same level. And if they can't, there is extra resources. So with the setup of FeedbackFruits, I'm just going to go through how we set it up and then give you a live demonstration. So for step one, we basically just created and added a content folder onto Blackboard, or we could have also added it onto an existing module. For step two, we then went to build content and selected FeedbackFruits. And for step three, this immediately launched a window and now we can play around. So I will be giving you guys a live demonstration of how we incorporated it. This was basically our window that both the student and the lecturer can see. So this is in the lecturer preview. So this is what I can control that a student won't be able to access. So this is one of our existing quizzes that our students did. As you can see, we had 866 students. However, only 798 viewed it, which in our case is still a really big one. So what we liked in the ethics department was the fact that you can see a student's progress, but you can also see the average. So if the average was a bit lower, we would then go back and try and help the students who needed it. A nice support as well was we were able to export the analytics, which would give it into an Excel file. So accountants love Excel, and this was a big one for us as well. You could add instructions, and this would basically just help the student so that they could also understand, because they were also learning FeedbackFruits for the first time. The nice part was also making sure that there was a deadline. So if you had a week to watch the video and do the quizzes, it would end after the week. So you didn't have to physically go and close the video. It would automatically do it itself. And of course, here we had all our students, and we did get permission from these students whether we can show their names. So the Copy Act was not violated. But here it does show us, okay, how many students got 100% and actually completed the quiz. As you go further down, you also do see students who didn't even attempt the quiz or who only answered one question. In terms of grading, we use FeedbackFruits in order to calculate our final 10% for predicate. So this also helped with all the admin as well as the physical marking of doing it. So this helped in just calculating the overall 10%. You downloaded it and you can then extract it and put it onto Blackboard itself. So this was how we used FeedbackFruits in a nutshell. So this is at the end what the student and the lecturer sees. So for the next slide, the advantages that not only as a lecturer, as an AD that we encountered, but also for students was it was very convenient, especially when we had strikes on campus and students had to miss class. We could upload the video onto FeedbackFruits and they could watch it at home in real time, but not just answer the quizzes, but also ask questions live. It also saves a lot of time in terms of actually preparing the quiz itself on Blackboard. I know for me, if I had to create a Blackboard quiz, it would take me around about 20 minutes if I was doing more than 20 questions. So this was very easy and very convenient, as well as engagement. Students were able to actively participate and actually get to know the topic really well by themselves at home or with other students and build a whole community. It was also easy to access, not for only for me, but also for students itself. But it was also easy to create. I mean, I uploaded a video, I added the questions, and that was it. And it was easy to use. However, the disadvantages was majority of our videos were an hour or 2 hours long. So with that, the video sometimes lagged. So it would take a lot of time to actually upload the video. Our second disadvantage was I had to be at my screen the whole time. As soon as my video was busy uploading and my screen went blank, it immediately kicked me out of FeedbackFruits itself, and then I had to start the process all over again. But another thing was also the manual entering of the quizzes. So if I had more than 10 multiple choice questions, it would take me a bit of time because I had to manually enter it. Our overall feedback, however, was it improved us, or it helped us with enhanced collaboration. It also made learning fun. A lot of our students said that they actually enjoyed it compared to, wow, I don't know if I should take offense to it, but compared to me actually speaking to them in a lecture hall. But it also simplified grading. I mean, we extracted the report and it was on Blackboard and I didn't have to physically mark. Student engagement was, there was active participation. It created two diverse learning styles. The students who preferred being at home and self-learning compared to a student who would rather be taught, as well as immediate feedback. So there is an option, but we selected that students could get their grades immediately with no hassle. So as soon as they were done with the quiz, they got their grades immediately. And in terms of scalability, it automated a lot of tedious tasks for us at School of Accounting. It facilitated topics that needed support. As I said, this is, or ethics was kind of a newer module, a revamped module. So for some students who really struggled with the topic, they could always go back to the video. So the videos were always made available. But it also supported our increased class size. Again, we had more than 800 students. So it helped, especially for me, to not have 800 students coming to my office for consultation. So we just asked 2 students, and these are also our top achievers in ethics for student reviews. So Inala said that it enhanced the activities that they were assigned. The only thing she did not like was the commentary. So when she was watching the quiz or the video, she could see another student's comments live while she was doing the video. She then made a suggestion about whether it could be possible to have an offline version just because of connectivity issues, and she is a student. Our next student, Anele. So Anele mentioned that it encouraged attention. Obviously, if you didn't watch the video, you couldn't answer the quizzes. So it made her have to pay attention. She also said it helped her in identifying key points of every chapter instead of her having to summarize it herself. But it's only as efficient as a lecturer using it. So in this case, I do think a little bit more training should be involved. But overall, I just think it was a fantastic tool. And I know for our side, me and the lecturer really, really enjoyed it. So thank you so much. And I will be handing over to Shani.
Hi everyone, thank you Zenobia. So we heard a lot about this FeedbackFruit tools, and I'm just going to also iterate what Zenobia said and also give you guys a showcase on how we have used it. So I'm working with 2 modules at the university. The first one is the UFSS module, so it's a University of the Free State Skills module, and that's a module that all our first years have to have, and we have roughly around average 8,000 students. And then the second module, or I want to say the supporting module, is digital skills, which is a self-paced pathway for students that they can work through on their own time, almost the same sense as a LinkedIn course, but it's on our university LMS that they can work through to upskill themselves with the necessary digital skills to be successful. So on the next slide, you will see we faced some challenges with these 2 modules before we had FeedbackFruits. And one of the first challenges for UFSS is, remember, it's first years, and some of them registered late, causing them to miss classes, and that puts them on a disadvantage. And without the initial lecturers, they lack the foundational knowledge necessary to start the semester on the right foot. And then also some of our students had class clashes, as this module is presented in a summer school method. We try to avoid that as well, but you know, modules always with all the timetables and everything, sometimes there are class clashes and students revert to attending the other modules than this one. For UFSS, for digital skills, my apologies, a challenge was that since this is a self-paced organization, there is actually no real life lecturers, there's no real life interaction. So keeping students engaged was kind of a big challenge for us, and we wanted to help students to get engaged with the content while they are going through it or working through it. So on the next slide, we will see some improvements that came with FeedbackFruits. And the tools that we used was the interactive document and also the interactive video. And which make these interactive was the question cards that they have available for us. And with these question cards, you have a multiple choice option, and then you also have a discussion thread or a longer question option. And we used both of them. So in digital skills, we made use of the multiple choice question, which just helped us to test our students' knowledge and make sure that they have the foundational basis before continuing. Whereas with the interactive videos for UFSS, we used the discussion or the longer text text questions, which also help the students to reflect more on the content and also develop a deeper engagement with the content. So the cool thing of this is that I really liked is you can actually restrict access in the document. So for example, digital skills, we have a study guide, right? Once you've added the question card, after a set of a chapter or whatever you would like, your students can't continue with the document until they actually answer or engage with the question card. So this was a cool tool to use to actually force students to pay attention, read through the content, and answer the question. Only after they've answered the multiple choice question, then they get access to the rest of the document. So that I want to say this guards the continuous just scrolling through the study guides, but them paying attention while they are doing it. And another cool thing is you can actually have the option of turning these question cards into just helping the students to pay attention, or you can let this question cards counts towards your overall semester mark. So there are settings that you can choose. Do you want this to pull through to your semester mark, or is it just for your students to help them engage and also make sure that they have the fundamental knowledge before they move on to applying new skills and new knowledge? So on the next page, we're going to look at how it improved facilitating teaching and learning process. So with these new engagements, we saw that students that missed the classes actually had time now to catch up on the classes. They can work through them, they can in a guided manner, and as well as use these videos and guided questions and reflections when they prepare for assessments and exams. On the analytics side, we saw that we can actually track our student behavior. So we can see when students are engaging, when they are engaging, what times are they engaging with, what content they are engaging. And we can also, when we have student queries, we can open up our FeedbackFruits app and see if a student actually engaged with the content. So a lot of students sometimes queries for a second attempt on assessment, or they would like to actually, they missed the deadline, or any student queries. We can use this analytics to actually check if a student did engage with content. Didn't they even go onto Blackboard on FeedbackFruits? Did they even work through it? So we can track that. We can also monitor when students want to prepare for example, readings. We can share readings with them and help them engage with them. And you can actually use that in your class then to see if this student actually did go through the reading. They did the preparing for the class, which is a cool thing to use. And then as well as we use Blackboard Collaborative, where we track student attendance. We did it in the past before FeedbackFruit. So Blackboard Collaborate, when you open up the video, it automatically tracks your attendance. Whereas with FeedbackFruits, it only tracks your attendance after you engage with the content and you have watched the video, and at the end you have completed your reflection. So I feel that's more fair towards students if you award the attendance mark for somebody that actually engaged in your class, as opposed to a student that missed the class but now they just open up a video and close it and never actually watched it. So this is a cool setting for us to use for our attendance as well. So FeedbackFruits, obviously, as all of our colleagues also have mentioned, it contributed greatly towards student engagement with the study material, and also fostering active participation from their side. And I think a lot of it contributed to taking responsibility for their learning while they are working through the content. So on the next slide, you will see how did we use this for our large classes. So as I've mentioned, digital skills is accessible to all students at the University of the Free State, and we roughly have around 45,000 students. So you can imagine it is not very easy to actually provide students with individual lecturing classes or actually have classes for this. That's why we made it a self-paced supporting module. And with our UFSS classes, there are roughly 8,000 students. So FeedbackFruits really helped us to engage many students simultaneously in also facilitating active learning without, as I've mentioned, requiring individual actions and attentions from a lecturer. On the analytics sides and insights, as I've mentioned previously, we can get track student engagement at the scale and watch their performance as well. We can identify trends from students as well as areas that need intervention from our side, and also allowing us to manage large cohorts effectively. For the consistencies, the platforms ensure that all students follow the same structured and learning pathway, maintaining consistency for all our students. Doesn't matter on what campus you are, if you're in Kwakwa, if you're on South Campus or main campus, we maintain consistency, which is, I feel, very critical in large classes. So I've said a lot, and our colleagues have also said a lot. So I'm really going to share my screen now, as I want to show you guys how we have incorporated FeedbackFruits. Grace, just let me know if you guys can see my screen.
Yes, we can see the digital citizenships page.
Great stuff. Okay, so this is the digital skills course that I've mentioned, and we are on our LMS right now, and I've just chosen any theme over here to show you guys. So I'm in student preview now. So this is what our students will be seeing when they open up Blackboard and when they toggle to this organization. So as I've mentioned, we build with our outcomes and all that, and students know exactly what is expected of them. And then at the bottom, we've added our study guide with all the information, and we've built this on FeedbackFruits. Right? So when you're a student and you have a study guide and you have so many content to work through, it sometimes can get overwhelming. So this is a nice tool for us to help students just scaffolding and also just time management while they're working through it, because their questions also include a little bit breaks for them. So as Zenobia also said, you can add your instructions over there to make it clear for your students. You can see we've added 5 question cards. So now the student automatically knows what to expect when they open up this study guide. So this is what they will be seeing. And to showcase you guys, at the right-hand side, you can see there's like a lock over there. What that just means is where we've added our question card, the students won't have access to the rest of the document. So the students can now read through and work through the study guide on their own time, read through all the content, and oh, here's a question break. So now they actually have to answer one of these questions before getting access to the rest. And sometimes students didn't read through or didn't pay too much attention while working through the content. When they get to this section, they're like, oh, okay, perhaps I just have to go through it again to make sure that everything's stuck. So for this interest state, I'm just going to select a random answer over here. So we ask the question, what action did Ntabiseng take to assess the legitimacy of the suspicious email? So let's say, for example, the student chooses B. They can submit the answer. They get immediate feedback if it's a correct answer or not. So now they know. This also helped our students prepare for quizzes that we have at the end of our organization, or at the end of all the content, they have to do quizzes. So this is also getting them into the mindset and training them to answer quizzes. Once they've clicked continue, it will give them access to the rest of the guide. So now that they've worked through this section, there's another question card they can answer. So I'm not going to go through everything in this guide. I quickly want to show you how we have used that in our videos as well with the UFSS module. So just give me a quick second to toggle over there. So in our UFSS module, we use the interactive video. So we record our classes for the asynchronous purpose of students at late registrations or they have class clashes. And now I'm just going to stay in my lecture role or instructor role so that you guys can see the analytics on our side. But the view is exactly the same for students that I've just shown you. Okay, so if we toggle to our class recording, let's go semester 2 class videos, and I'm still going to pick the second one over here. So once it loads, and what is a cool factor for me, it opens in a different window. So that's also nice for students when they toggle between a lot of documents, that it doesn't get too distracting for them or too difficult for them to toggle through all the windows and tabs they have. And then, as Zenobia also showed in her showcase, you can add instructions over there. You have your video over here, but now we can also see what are the most frequent words that pop up in terms of their reflections, what are the trends. I'm not going to go through everything over here because Zenobia already did, but I'm going to show you when you open your video. It's also going to portray the same lock buttons on the end, at the bottom, where we've added question cards. So then they can watch the video, we can pause, reflect on what you've just learned, and then move on. For the lecturer side, if you click on that right button, you can actually see where did we add the question card and what minutes, what was the question, and here for the analytics part, you can actually see how many students have got this answer correct and how many got it incorrect and how many partially correct and how many skipped the question. So this is also a good thing to use even if you have smaller classes, but for our large classes, this is very valuable data for us. So yes, that is how we used FeedbackFruits from our side, and thank you very much for the time. I'm going to hand back to Grace now.
Thank you so much, Shani. Let me just quickly share the main slides again. And thank you to everyone who presented. I think it was really nice. I mean, I've been working with you for a while now, but just hearing each use case laid out so clearly really made the unique value add so evident. That's why I just wanted to kind of close off with a quick recap. Now, it's not to say this is the only thing that each use case focused on. As you can hear, many used analytics just in different ways, but just to kind of leave off and refresh again. So Violet, I mean, obviously you did an amazing job at coordinating the efforts across the faculties. I think we can already see from this, even if they're using the same tools, they're using it in different ways for obviously vastly different content as well. So hopefully you can see the diversification that's happening there as well. But Lali and Ree, right at the start, we're looking at the completion and participation insights. So something that can be drawn from the analytics. Zenobia also using analytics, but also to directly inform the future teaching practices based on which topics and themes were scoring lower potentially, indicating students need a little bit more insight on that. And then Shani, which we just concluded with the flexibility for meaningful student engagement, the fact that you're actually being able to enable students to participate and engage in a meaningful way, simply because otherwise they could not, like it wouldn't be available to them or they wouldn't be incentivized to do so. So this is absolutely fantastic. Thank you, everyone. And I think we can all hear that there are two main commonalities that really at least stand out to me when I'm hearing this, which is it's driven by student engagement. We want meaningful engagement, but also analytics is what helps get us there. So using those analytics both to understand how students are currently engaging and then how we can take active change, either through didactical methods, pedagogical, or just actually the activity design itself to ensure that we reach those objectives at the end as well. So to understand how that can concretely happen, we've obviously looked at isolated activities now. When everyone was looking on screen, it was individual activities. And so you have those analytics, just like Shani actually just walked you all through, where you see the completion, the progress, the scores. But you're not only going to be looking at individual instances, you obviously have a whole course and a whole semester to consider. And that's where they can start compiling into course level insights. So these compile all FeedbackFruits activities in your course and give you engagement insights, such as the average activity completion rate, but it also breaks down the type of interactions of the students. So do you know that you have a lot of interactive documents, but you're expecting more discussion posts than there actually are? That could be an indication to lower the stakes of the activity to make sure students feel comfortable to discuss and ask questions. Alternatively, I know we've talked a lot about these interactives, but if you're looking at the self-reflections or the peer reviews, really that feedback and assessment side of things, and you're noticing that students, for every 2 ratings that they're giving, they're only writing 1 comment. That indicates that they're prioritizing quantitative over qualitative feedback. So you might want to consider making comments mandatory if you want more qualitative input being passed between the students. So those are just 2 examples about how insights and analytics can be used. I thought it was important to just zoom out to this course approach, so we actually see the end result as well from that perspective. Now, of course, with all of this, and just like those course level analytics, we take a partnership approach to the development of it. So that really means that when there's insights and needs from an institution, we listen to those and let those influence the development process that we take. And similarly, within this partnership model, all the teams that are allocated are going to be regionally relevant. And so here we have two examples of our community of practice, which is the two most recent examples from Iceland and Denmark, which is when groups of partners and pockets of innovators that are popping up across the world that are heavy FeedbackFruits users can actually get together and exchange experiences, talk about what's happening. So I may be biased here, but my hope is that maybe this time next year we could have one in South Africa, at least based on the turnout here as well. So this is just a nice note to end on. You can hopefully see that it's the red thread that's throughout the entire implementation process, right up until the end and the future of the teaching and learning system as well. That the community, the collaboration, and on that note, that brings us actually to the end of the webinar. We've got 2 minutes left to just wrap up and close off. Here are some resources that you can turn to for additional information insights. We obviously have all of our how-to videos where you can see the different perspectives for each of our tools. But more recently, we launched our learning design community. So just like we have these physical community events that are happening, we do have a digital version of that, which is a collection of templates put forward by all of our partners internationally that you can use. We can refer to, first of all, both for inspiration, insight, much like Matlali and Ree were doing. So when you're having conversation with instructors based on learning outcomes and their desired goal for the activity, you can then find something that's already been created to meet those. And then even from the website, with a click of a button, you can implement it within your LMS, should you be using FeedbackFruits. So do check that out. That is this link here, the library of course templates. And of course, anyone who's an active FeedbackFruits user, you can always utilize our support chat. So these resources, along with additional links to any sources from the webinar today and the recording, will be shared afterwards by me. But that really does conclude today. So hopefully you were able to walk away with an array of perspectives, both from individual activities to entire course design and how that can start tying into your institutional strategies as well. And then how that can come together to make evidence-based and informed teaching practices and decisions. Thank you again for all of our presenters. It was fantastic to have you share your insight today. And please, for the rest of you as well, stay in touch, reach out if you have any questions or queries. We don't have time for the Q&A, but Nee let me know that most of the questions were actually answered in the chat as well. But that's to say, if anything comes up afterwards, just send us an email or reach out to someone from the team and we're happy to help out. Great, thank you everyone.